little in-depth mindset question is perfect for you. So stay on. If you are here with us now, I'd love you to hashtag live. If you're watching the replay, hashtag replay. So we might think that our personal and professional development journey should be this like upward trajectory journey, week by week, month by month, year by year, that we go on this linear path. And then we get up to the top and we turn back and we look around and we think, oh yeah, okay, I've had this lots of growth and lots of transformation. But if it doesn't happen with our finances and we can go on this, what seems to be sometimes like a bit of a rocky road, but we eventually go up, then we're also going to have to appreciate that that also happens inside of our professional growth as well, and our personal growth as well. So first of all, let's just define what stagnant growth is. So then you can say, yep, that's me. I feel like that's me at the moment, or I've been there in the past. And so it's this period of time where we have little to no growth. It's this plateau that we experience where we stop asking quality questions, where we know, say with the Demartini method, which is what we focus at Maximum Growth, having you to ask quality questions, you stop asking those questions. You focus, maybe if we have the being, doing and having aspect, the being, doing and having, we focus too much maybe on the being, and we just like be, but then there's no effort to shift or change. There's no doing and there's no doing aspect. That kind of gets cut off. And so maybe some of the language you might say to yourself is like, I'm too old to change. That maybe doesn't apply to some of you because you're like, no, or but maybe it does. There's like, but I've done things this way for so long. It's the effort it takes to go and change is so great, or the effort to go and learn something new is too much. I'm just going to keep in that comfort zone. And so what we can also notice is that we lose that sense of curiosity. You know what you love about like a child, where they're just curious to learn and learn more and ask questions, but why? And so that childlike curiosity can have a tendency to dissipate as we become more stagnant with our growth. And so we become too much in a way of creature of habit. One of the things that we keep on doing is we keep on doing the same thing and then expecting a different result, or hoping for a different result, but not doing anything different. I know for me personally, when I, up until I went to LA Breakthrough Experience just recently, part of that was there was an aspect of that I felt like I was plateauing. Like I felt like I wasn't growing as much as I wanted to grow. And I felt like bored is not the word. Maybe you might have another word for me, but it was definitely, maybe you can relate, but it just felt like, hey, Mohammed, Simo, hey, Brendan. So, but just feeling like I've got so much more inside of me to give. And I want that to, like, definitely want 2024 to be a rocking year. And I feel like I'm not quite stepping up to the plate in the way I wanted to. Hey, Andrew. And so the result of that is that there's this, like, I felt like a stagnant growth, or just, I wouldn't even say growth, it was just stagnant. And so part of that stagnant growth for some people is this like fear of attempting. It's like, it's so much easier to stay in that comfortable zone than it is to the fear of going in. Well, what happens if I fail? What happens if people criticize me? What happens if I put all this effort in and then it just doesn't work? And, you know, what a waste. And so what we want to understand is that there are some outcomes that happen because we have stagnant growth. And one of the things is there's actually, we'll go through 3 of the top dynamics that change within your body and your life as a result of stagnant growth. And you might find this interesting. And that is a reduced cognitive function. So I don't know if you know this, but they have a 75-year study that found that less development correlates with a weaker, or less like development in someone's life correlates with a weaker cognitive function later in life, which means that you've got more potential for depression, more vulnerability of like a cognitive decline. So as we challenge ourselves, because with that challenge requires us to think differently, requires us to stretch our brain, requires us to, you know, myelinate our brain in different ways. And so we're thinking and we're growing as opposed to decaying inside of our cognitive function. So that's one of the upsides then of continually growing. Another challenge that happens when we stagnate with our growth is that we can never have poor poorer quality. So essentially it can be this poorer quality of life because we've stagnated, which means we've maybe stagnated and we're not moving as much as we want to. We're not career developing ourselves. We're not wanting to develop in our intimate relationships, maybe with our spouses. And so that results in more isolation, less fulfillment, which changes your physiology, less movement, which your body gets stiff and sore and you're standing up just as an effort. And so, of course, that's going to lead into poorer quality of life and poorer health. And let's just face it, like the overall, if we stay in that stagnant growth, it's just a poor, like a decreased satisfaction in life, because what happens is if we don't have that spark and fulfillment and we're not challenging ourselves, but we're doing what's easy, we do what's easy over and over again. There's not that there's the sense of boredom, which maybe we end up doing more immediate gratification, do things that are just right now, what's going to be pleasing for me, rather than pushing ourselves and stretching ourselves. So there are some kind of dynamics around stagnant growth. And so why would we want to have growth in our life? Why would we want to have a different mindset around growing? And essentially is if we can focus on this like ever dynamic and ever evolving life, because that's what it is. Life is constantly moving and there's growth, there's motion and growth in life. So we also want to have that as well. We're not like the whole nature is not growing around us and moving around us. And we're like, I'm going to stay the same. I'm just going to stay here and hopefully nothing, and everything else can change around. And we want to grow with it. We want to move with life. And so if what we want to do is kind of shift our mindset to have more of that growth mindset. Now, if we do a little bit of like a psychology theory, so there's a man and his name is Erik Erikson, and so he actually has 8 stages of development that an individual would go through. And I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but I mean, the first is like trust and mistrust, which is that infant years, and then it's autonomy and shame and doubt, or as the next one, it's initiative versus guilt with that toddler stage or preschool stage. And so we go up in our development. Normally the 20s and 30s is around intimacy or isolation. It's like because we're forming relationships and family. And then we get to that point where it's like being able to have our like focus on the bigger, wider community, or we stagnate. And so there's this kind of 40 to 65 is that period of time where we can find ourselves going into that stagnation. And it's actually what he described as one of the developmental stages, or it's actually where people get stuck. I personally find when working with a lot of people, and what we focus in at Maximum Growth is there's the teenage years between 12 and 18 is where you're forming your identity, or you have confusion. And so during that really formative years, if people don't have a strong sense of identity, they get stuck. And then even in their 60s, they're still trying to figure out, God, I don't even know who I am, or I've just found out who I am for the first time, or expressed who I am for the first time. And it's like now just kind of growing through that developmental stage. So we can also have that when we get to that stage 7, which is like that generative stage versus stagnation stage. And so we're either generating and building and growing, or we stagnate. And so what we want to essentially do is there are a few things that you can do to kind of switch so that you get into a growth mindset, or into a growing stage rather than stagnating. And one would be, the first one, I can't go without it, because that's what we're all about here at Maximum Growth, is really about that growth mindset. And you've probably heard it a million times before. Yeah, Tanya, I know what that is. But to know it and to live it are two different things. To know it and then implement it in times where you stagnate is a very different kettle of fish, because we want to employ it into our daily habit, into our life, into our mindset, which is why we do classes with you each and every week of that, laying that foundation. Because sometimes when we go through challenge, or we go through some difficulties in our life, we can revert back to our old way of thinking, and we forget to have a growth mindset. We just go back to our like an operating system that's here, and we're like, oh, hang on, I've got my training. And so it's kind of like the moment where someone's not breathing, and you go into freeze response because you're like, I don't know what to do, and you've forgotten all your training that you've done to do resus. And so we want on those moments to be able to have our growth mindset. And so that growth mindset has embracing change. Change is happening around us all the time. And so we want to have a willing and an adaptability to change with what's going on. An example for at the moment is like AI is really big. Hey, Justin, AI is really big in say, growing in business. And I saw this really funny skit the other day on Instagram, which I sent to so many people because it just made me laugh with tears rolling down. And it was this idea that, in our generation, when we become old and we're in our, 80s and 90s, we'll be, our grandkids will be coming home with a robot. And we're like, you can't marry a robot. But times have changed. I mean, people are having relationships with different like non-people. And people are having relationships over the internet and they're actually seeing each other. So things are evolving. And so it says, for example, AI. And so we want to embrace change instead of kind of resisting it, because resisting it means we're in a sense also stagnating and not moving with the times, which is also kind of why I really loved, I put a post out recently of Demartini on his phone, because I was like, good on you for being able to like be progressive and get up with the times, even though you're like, I haven't had a phone in XYZ years. And now he's like being progressive. So it's about embracing change. We also want to be able to, as our growth mindset, we want to be able to foster like an ability to continually to learn, because what keeps us stagnant is us going, nah, I don't want to learn. I've kind of had enough. I don't want to put that learning inside of me anymore. I've had enough. I'm like learning fatigue. And it's like, how can we spark that back up inside of you so the stagnant growth shifts and changes, and then you can get back into the game again. So it's like, what could you do to cultivate that learning streak inside of you? And then also just our ability to adapt to the changing environment is also really important. So that's one, our growth mindset. The second aspect in order to shift from our stagnation is find your flow. And so what I mean by that is we can have moments where we are, and I'm sure you've had it in your life, and maybe they've been brief and fleeting, or maybe they come maybe a little bit more often for you. But just those times where you just feel like in flow. I mean, how else do you describe it? Where you just feel like so connected. If there was a greater, higher source, like connected in with that, you feel like there's this intrinsic motivation because it comes from within, and you are just able to connect with whatever it is that you're working on or doing, whether it's in the state of writing, speaking, helping someone, doing your service. But that, it's like, how do we shift you, if you're having stagnation, into that finding flow again? Like sometimes it's like doing a life review, and what are the moments that have helped you to find flow, and how do we cultivate more of those moments? Because it's going to be like one, say, behavioral change that you can do that can then get you out of that stagnation, because you're just putting yourself in. If you know, for example, speaking in front of people is going to get you into a flow, and you haven't been because of, for whatever reason, you've been hiding away from the world. Okay, great. Get yourself out in front of people and start speaking, and then allow that to flow, and then allow yourself to kind of like connect back in again. And then let that, as a result, the stagnation starts to dissipate because you're doing more of the things that you love. So remember, we can do a mindset change, which is the changing the mindset and having a growth mindset. And we can also behavioral change. So we call it bottom up change. And then we have top down change. So we want to do a bit of both. And so the part of why we also want to find flow is because in those moments where we're going to do the difficult and easy part, well, we don't even notice the difficult, actually, because in flow, you're not thinking, oh, this is really hard. You're just in flow. And so you're kind of more willing to kind of work and do what you love when you're in that space. And the result of that is it's kind of almost like tapping your mind and changing your mindset, and it changes your physiology. And because your physiology changes, then going and sitting down and, I don't know, Netflixing for the day just doesn't even feel like something you would want to do, because you're like, oh, it's like almost the switch comes back on and you feel alive again. So that could definitely be helpful in terms of helping you to kind of shift out of the stagnant growth. So a couple more things before we wrap up. One is what's really important when we have our growth is we want to plan our growth and we want to recognize our progress. There are two aspects when we're growing that are really important. One is, if we're in the corporate world, we would want to have a developmental plan and growing out or professional growth plans, so that we know where we're going and what are the skills we're going to learn, and we're going to have a plan for that. We also want to maybe also consider doing that. We have a training plan. We go to the gym and we have our training plan. I'm going to follow these exercises and I know it's going to give me X, Y, Z. We have a financial plan, but why don't we have a plan for our growth inside of our Maximum Growth Academy? We have a section which is quite new inside of our section, which is around creating that growth plan, so that you have what we have like dissolve and level up in terms of side A and side B of the application of the Demartini method. So we set a growth plan in the different areas of life, so that you know what you're working on, so you know where you're going, what are the things that you want to clear from an emotional point of view that will make a difference to your life. But we want to set those growth plans in place, as opposed to be reactionary with our growth. We're more proaction. And then we also want to recognize our progress, because let's face it, if we live in the world of universal principles, we can sometimes have this perception that, well, I better not celebrate that I just achieved something. Better not celebrate, because if I celebrate and I get high and excited and elated, then something bad's going to happen and I'm going to be humbled, and then I'm going to have to reap the consequences of that. And it's like, it's okay to just celebrate. I just want to say that, like, it's okay to celebrate. It's okay to take a moment and just say, wow, like, look how far you've come. Look what you've done. Look what you've achieved. Okay, great. And then let's build on that. And what's the next thing you're going to focus on, and create that void again? Because it's when we get stuck in that achievement, it's like, I've done, I've achieved, I'm at the top, and then we don't see the next peak. Then that's when we're on the downfall. But it's like, if we're at the top and then at that moment we celebrate and appreciate, and then we create a new void ahead, and we think, okay, what's the next level up? What's the next thing that I'm going to go and achieve? What's the next focus? And what's my next development plan that I'm going to work towards now? We've just created more growth ahead of us. The reason why we stagnate is because we've hit a plateau, because we've forgotten to plan again. So one thing, I want you to be okay with saying, great, congratulations. This is a great achievement. If you want to celebrate inside of Students of Wisdom, inside of Maximum Growth, our inner circle that we have for our Maximum Growth members, and you want to celebrate something, and we will all cheer along with you. And then it's like, okay, then what next? So that is one thing to appreciate when it comes to your growth. So as a wrap, stagnant growth, you're going to listen to your internal thinking. You're going to feel it, because you just know it. It's a flat stage you're going through. We want to also consider then, how do we adapt that growth mindset, which is why we do Maximum Growth each and every week. So coming to class, and then also that finding flow, like what is it, maybe reflecting on some of those things that help find flow, so we can kind of shift your physiology. It will also shift your perception as well. And then we also want to do those growth plans, as well as recognize our progress along the way. And yes, it is very okay to do that. So hopefully you found this helpful, insightful. I'd love to hear your comments below. We do actually have a workbook for this. So if it is something that you'd love the workbook, you just need to also hashtag workbook, and we will get it into your hot little hands for you. If you're watching the replay, you'll find the workbook downloadable inside of this class. So this class will be up for the next 7 days. So you will have to get in, make sure you do listen to it, because it will disappear into the ether and it will be uploaded inside of Maximum Growth Academy. So if you are part of our membership, then you will get access to it for the lifetime of your membership. Hopefully you've been helpful. Hopefully some gold nuggets of wisdom for you in this session for today. Thank you for taking the time. I deeply appreciate you. All right, so we're also now on to our Ask Me Anything class for today. We have one question, unless there's another question out there and you have something bubbling up inside that you'd love to have a question asked or answered. The first question we have, let me just drop and drag this over so I can read it on the screen. And the question is, Tanya, I started working on the wealth module in the Maximum Growth Academy, which I love. The mention says, I turn my learning into earning, and that you create a strategy for courses that you attend. I was wondering if you could provide some insights into what that looked like from a strategy creation process and the thoughts behind this. Okay, so I've been a really big believer in figuring out ways to get a return on your investment when you're going to go and do a course. unless we have an infinite amount of money and we can just keep on learning and learning and learning, well, then no problem. Doesn't matter how much you spend, and doesn't matter how much each course is. But if we have a business and we go and do learning because we're wanting to grow our skills, if it was an employee who came along and said, I want to do a course, and you would think, well, how am I going to get a return on my investment if I send you to this course? What's the outcome that I'm going to get as a result? And maybe it's like they're going to do a course on copywriting, and then the result is I'm going to do copywriting sales sequence afterwards, and that result is going to we're going to make sure that we get 20 sales, and those 20 sales are going to bring in X amount, and that's going to get more than a return on the income of the cost of the course and the lost time that the employee is not going to be there. And then you've also made a profit. So you're thinking about that if it's an employee, but then for ourselves, we think, oh no, I'm just going to go and spend money and do a course. So we also want to think about that in the same light. So it really depends on what the course is. It depends on what you're learning to depend if you can take that straight and put it into a program. So for example, I'm thinking of someone in our community who I really love and really value. And I did a 4-part series just recently on human behavior. And there was one section in it, and I talked about sibling dynamics. I talked about this whole like sibling dynamic and what happens inside of that. And so that's also put inside of the Maximum Growth Academy. So you get a little bit more information, a little bit more content. And then that information that they've done is also then they've been able to go and put that and adapt that into a course and add that into a course, and then now go and sell that course and make a really big, more in-depth course on that one topic from the little snippet that they got from me, which I think is super amazing. Like, wow, like being able to grow and expand and take what that was and share it with the world and make money from it. Well, I'm gonna like totally fist pump that. And so you want to be thinking about that too. If you're going to go and do, say, an event, and you're going to go and spend there, you're going to think, okay, I'm going to set an objective that I'm going to have 3 hot leads that I'm going to convert and nurture over the next month, and then make sure that then I'm going to convert them into a sale, and that sale is going to be worth X dollars, and then because of that I get a return on my investment. And so you're not maybe getting a return straight away, but it's a longer term investment. So these are ways. I mean, it depends. You can go and network when you're there and make money. You can take the content that you learn and make money. You've just got to think about it. It really depends. I know for me personally, when I go to, say, the breakthrough experience, one of the things of why I love going there, and also why I love doing Maximum Growth, because I know that I get to help people to do this same thing, but on a weekly basis, rather than, say you do breakthrough once a year. That concentrated space of time of me just sitting down and applying the Demartini method, it may not be a direct result of making money. Like, I don't directly, like, I'm not sitting there and making money doing it, but by default, as a result of doing it, I've noticed my income increase because I've shifted shame and guilt. I've become more of myself. I've dissolved some of my subordinations. I'm living and breathing the work that I share with people. I'm owning and identifying with it. I have really cool stories to share. And so the byproduct of that, so it's not a direct income, but it's an indirect income, results from doing the work. So then I noticed that it's not a direct, like I've taken the information and made money, but it's more a byproduct of like doing that learning or doing that application that then makes me money. So hopefully that's been helpful if you have been sitting in this idea that you do want to start turning your learning into earning, that maybe some of those ideas will help you to start to create your own learning inside of the courses and the programs that you do.